What is unconditional surrender? If one surrenders oneself, there will be no one to ask questions or to be thought of. Either the thoughts are eliminated by holding on to the root thought I, or one surrenders oneself unconditionally to the higher power. These are the only two ways for realization. Complete surrender does require that you have no desire of your own. You must be satisfied with whatever God gives you, and that means having no desires of your own. There are two ways to achieve surrender. One is looking into the source of I, emerging into that source. The other is feeling I am helpless by myself. God alone is all-powerful, and except by throwing myself completely on Him, there is no other means of safety for me. By this method, one gradually develops the conviction that God alone exists and that the ego does not count. Both methods lead to the same goal. Complete surrender is another name for jnana, or liberation. By whatever path you go, you will have to lose yourself in the One. Surrender is complete only when you reach the stage, Thou art all, and Thy will be done. The state is not different from jnana. In Soham, the affirmation of I am He, there is dualism. In surrender, there is Advaita, non-dualism. But in the reality, There is neither dualism nor non-dualism, but that which is. Surrender appears easy because people imagine that once they say with their lips, "I surrender," and put their burdens on their Lord, they can be free and do what they like. But the fact is that you can have no likes or dislikes after your surrender. Your will should become completely non-existent, the Lord's will taking its place. The death of the ego in this way brings about a state which is not different from jnana. So, by whatever path you may go, you must come to jnana or oneness. To each person, that way is the best which appears easiest or appeals most. All the ways are equally good, as they lead to the same goal, which is the merging of the ego in the self. What the Bhakta calls surrender, the person who does vichara, inquiry, calls jnana. Both are trying only to take the ego back to the source from which it sprang and make it merge there. Leave it to God rather than hasten such a search. Surrender unreservedly. One of two things must be done. Either surrender because you admit your inability and require a higher power to help you, or investigate the cause of misery by going to the source and merging into the self. Either way, you will be free from misery. God never forsakes one who has surrendered. Surrender once for all and be done with the desire. So long as a sense of doership is retained, there is the desire. That is also personality. If this goes, the self is found to shine forth pure. The sense of doership is the bondage, and not the actions themselves. Be still and know that I am God. Here, stillness is total surrender, without a vestige of individuality. Stillness will prevail, and there will be no agitation of mind. Agitation of mind is the cause of desire, the sense of doership and personality. If that is stopped, there is quiet. There, knowing means being. It is not the relative knowledge involving the triads, knowledge, knowing, and known. I am that I am. I am is God. Not thinking I am God. Realize I am, and do not think I am. No, I am God, it is said, and not think I am God. All talk of surrender is like pinching brown sugar from a brown sugar image of Lord Ganesha and offering it as food offering to the same Lord Ganesha. You say you offer your body, soul, and all possessions to God. Were they yours that you could offer them? At best, you can only say, I falsely imagined till now that all these, which are yours, were mine. Now I realize they are yours. I shall no more act as if they are mine. This knowledge that there is nothing but God or self, that I and mine don't exist, and that only the self exists, is jnana. Thus, there is no difference between bhakti and jnana. Bhakti is Jnana Mata, or the mother of Jnana. If you have surrendered, you must be able to abide by the will of God and not make a grievance of what may not please you. Things may turn out differently from the way they look apparently. Distress often leads people to faith in God. You must only trust God. Surrender to Him and abide by His will, whether He appears or vanishes. Await His pleasure. If you ask Him to do as you please, it is not surrender, but command to Him. You cannot have Him obey you and yet think that you have surrendered. He knows what is best and when and how to do it. Leave everything entirely to Him. His is the burden. You have no longer any cares. All your cares are His. Such is surrender. This is bhakti. Or inquiry, to whom these questions arise. Dive deep in the heart and remain as a self. One of these two ways is open to the aspirant. Complete surrender is impossible in the beginning. Partial surrender is certainly possible for all. But in the course of time, that will lead to complete surrender. Well, if surrender is impossible, what can be done? There is no peace of mind. You are helpless to bring it about. It can be done only by surrender. It is enough that one surrenders oneself. Surrender is to give oneself up to the original cause of one's being. Do not delude yourself by imagining such a source to be some God outside you. Your source is within yourself. Give yourself up to it. That means that you should seek the source and merge in it. Call it God or call it karma. Some higher power will carry on everything in this world according to the development of the mind of each individual. If the responsibility is thrown on the higher power, things will go of their own accord. We walk on this ground. While doing so, do we consider at every step whether we should raise one leg after the other or stop at some stage? Isn't the walking done automatically? The same is the case with inhaling and exhaling. No special effort is made to inhale or exhale. The same is the case with this life also. Can we give up anything if we want to? Or do anything as we please? Quite a number of things are done automatically without our being conscious of it. Complete surrender to God means giving up all thoughts and concentrating the mind on Him. If we can concentrate on Him, other thoughts disappear. If the actions of the mind, speech and body are merged with God, all the burdens of our life will be on Him. present difficulty is that people think they are the doer, but it is a mistake. It is the higher power which does everything, and a person is only a tool. If one accepts that position, they are free from troubles. Otherwise, they court them. Take, for instance, the sculpted figure at the base of a temple tower, which is made to appear as if it is bearing the burden of the tower on its shoulder. Its posture and look are a picture of great strain, which gives the impression that it is bearing the weight of the tower. But think, the tower is built on the earth, and it rests on its foundations. The figure is a part of the tower, but it is made to look as if it is bearing the weight of the tower. Is it not funny? So also is the person who takes on themselves the sense of doing. Of course, you can follow the path of love. You can do so. But when you talk of love, there is duality, is there not? The person who loves, and the entity called God who is loved. The individual is not separate from God. Hence, love means one has love towards one's own self. Love itself is the actual form of God. If by saying, I do not love this, I do not love that, you reject all things as separate, that which remains is swarupa. That is the real form of the self. That is pure bliss. Call it pure bliss, God, Atma, or what you will. That is devotion. That is realization. And that is everything. If you thus reject everything as separate, what remains is the self alone. That is real love. One who knows the secret of that love finds the world itself full of universal love. The experience of not forgetting consciousness alone is the state of devotion, which is the relationship of unfading, real love, because the real knowledge of self which shines as the undivided, supreme bliss itself, surges up as the nature of love. Only if one knows the truth of love, which is the real nature of self, will the strong, entangled knot of life be untied. Only if one attains the height of love will liberation be attained. Such is the heart of all religions. The experience of self is only love, which is seeing only love, hearing only love, feeling only love, tasting only love, and smelling only love, which is bliss. If the longing is there, realization will be forced on you, even if you do not want it. Long for it intensely, so that the mind melts in devotion. After camphor burns away, no residue is left. The mind is the camphor. When it has resolved itself into the self, without leaving even the slightest trace behind, it is realization of the self. Meditation helps concentration of mind. Then the mind is free from other thoughts and is full of the meditated form. The mind then becomes one with the object of meditation, and this makes it quite pure. Then think, who is the worshipper? The answer is I, that is, the self. In this way, the self is ultimately gained. worshipping the formless reality by unthought thought is the best kind of worship. But when one is not fit for such formless worship of God, worship of form alone is suitable. Formless worship is possible only for people who are devoid of the ego form. Know that all the worship done by people who possess the ego form is only worship of form. The pure state of being attached to grace, which is devoid of any attachment, alone is one's own state of silence, which is devoid of any other thing. Know that one's ever abiding as that silence, having experienced it as it is, alone is true mental worship. Know that the performance of the unceasing, true and natural worship, in which the mind is submissively established as the One Self, having installed the Lord on the heart throne, is silence, the best of all forms of worship. Silence, which is devoid of the assertive ego, alone is liberation. The evil forgetfulness of self, which causes one to slip down from that silence, alone is non-devotion. Know that abiding as that silence, with the mind subsided as non-different from self, is the truth of Shiva Bhakti, devotion to God. When one has completely surrendered oneself at the feet of Shiva, thereby becoming of the nature of the self, the resulting abundant peace, in which there is not even the least room within the heart for one to make any complaint about one's defects and deficiencies. Alone is the nature of supreme devotion. One's thus becoming a slave to the Lord, and one's remaining quiet and silent, devoid even of the egotistical thought, I am his slave, is self-abidance. And this is the supreme knowledge. Devotion without a motive is possible. Worshipping God for the sake of a desired object is worshipping that desired object alone. The complete cessation of any thought of a desired object is the first prerequisite in a mind which wishes to attain the state of Shiva. When you see God in all, do you think of God or do you not? You must certainly think of God if you want to see God all around you. Therefore, keeping God in your mind in this way becomes meditation. And meditation is the stage before realization. Realization can only be in and of the self. It can never be apart from the self. Meditation must precede realization. But whether you make meditation on God or on the self is immaterial, for the goal is the same. You cannot by any means escape the self. You want to see God in all, but not in yourself. If everything is God, are you not included in that everything? Being God yourself, is it a wonder that all is God? This is the method advised in Sri Bhagavatam and elsewhere by others. But even for this practice, there must be the seer or thinker. Who are they? How to see God? To see God is to be God. There is no all-pervasive apart from God for Him to pervade. He alone is. The end of the practice, even in the path of devotion, is attained only after complete surrender. What does it mean except that effacement of the ego results in self remaining as it always has been? Whatever path one may choose, the I is inescapable. The I that does the motiveless acts. The I that pines for joining the Lord from whom it feels it has been separated. The I that feels it has slipped from its real nature, and so on. The source of this I must be found out. Then all questions will be solved. If I also is an illusion, who then casts off the illusion, you ask? The I casts off the illusion of I, and yet remains as I. Such is the paradox of self-realization. The realized do not see any contradiction in it. Take the case of bhakti, devotion. I approach Ishwara and pray to be absorbed in him. I then surrender myself with faith and concentrate on him. What remains afterwards? In place of the original I, perfect self-surrender leaves a residuum of God in which the I is lost. This is the highest form of devotion and surrender. and the height of vairagya, non-attachment. You give up this and that of my possessions. But if you give up I and mine instead, all are given up at a stroke. The very seed of possession is lost. Thus the evil is nipped in the bud, or crushed in the germ itself. Dispassion, vairagya, must be very strong to do this. Eagerness to do it must be equal to that of a person kept under water, trying to rise up to the surface for their life.